I had a friend who worked, their NDA would be expired now, and we're not really friends anymore, but they worked at Activision for a long time. And something I talked about during that I knew from them was that essentially there are these hierarchies of power, especially in bigger companies, and it's something that other developers have told me about as well, where you have people who are almost like in gangs that look at people differently. So, for example, you have the people above in management, and then there's actually people above them too, but you'll have management, then below them you'll have normal video game developers. They're making everything happen. You know, like when you reload a gun in Call of Duty, there's a guy who made that happen, right? There's people who worked on that. Those people, the unsung heroes that actually get that game to work. Now, those people are often caught in the middle. However, they're getting fed a shit sandwich from the people above them in management. People who are more like bureaucrats, people who are more like money people, who don't actually understand video game development. And they are kind of coming down on them and saying, get this done as quick as possible, as cheaply as possible. And a lot of the developers are saying, how do we make the best game we can? So they're getting this thing from above them that's making them mad. And then who's beneath them? Like in terms of this hierarchy of power. You have quality assurance testers, and then the normal average buyer of your product. I mean, these are people that would be considered beneath them, even though their jobs and their roles in this are very important. If you don't have QA, you don't have a game. If you don't have a buyer, you don't have I guess you could get a game out, but you'll never have another game, right? So everybody's important in this process of releasing something creative, but there's a lack of communication in between all of these different fields with a lot of different companies. You know, in that Activision example, it was management was mean to devs, then devs a lot of times ended up lashing out and being mean to quality assurance, to the point where there were rules that if you had any feedback or suggestions, even though you were technically an employee of the company, you couldn't even talk to a developer. It was like, don't talk to them. They'll just get pissed. Their panties will get in a twist, they'll get mad at you, and they'll insult you. So don't do that, because they're getting that from above them. And a lot of that dynamic ends up being like high school, you know, like with high school bullies, or like you have the jocks and you have the cheerleaders and you have the nerds and you have, you know what I mean? Like those social dynamics end up getting dragged into companies. But then all of this frustration at every level, I think also does get passed off to the people who are buying your thing. At the end of the day, if you don't want to make a product, like if you just want a creative venture, that's almost impossible now because of the world we live in. But then you can't sell it, you know? And when you start to sell it, you open yourself up to response from people who are going to possibly buy it.